Alrighty. Okay, let's get this show on the road.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Welcome to the September 10th, 2018 meeting for the Shawnee County Board of Commissioners. My name is Kevin Cook. I serve as the chair of the Shawnee County Commission. Joining me today is Commissioner Shelley Bueller. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Commissioner Bob Archer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Clerk, if we could begin with our first item.
First item is item 2, unfinished business. Number 1, discussion and consider approval of Home Rule Resolution number 2018-2, adopting the Shawnee County Comprehensive Plan.
Just as a matter of course to let the public know where we are at, this is a matter that the Planning Commission took up, brought to the County Commission. It was sent back to the Planning Commission. They then brought it back to the county. We've had a couple of meetings on it already. Last time this came before the Commission, there were a series of proposals from each of the commissioners. We then let that simmer, or so to speak, so that everybody would have the opportunity to see what possible changes each commissioner might have for the comprehensive plan, and that brings us back to today. So, Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Krause, Shawnee County Councilor. Staff in my office has been working really hard, Joni and Megan, to put together this PowerPoint so we can try to distill down into a forum that we can speak about the recommended changes and discussion points from each commissioner. There are obviously areas where the three of you had agreement, and so I want to go through that. We also had areas where two of you touched upon the same items, and so in order to have a discussion about this instead of just going page by page and talking about each individual edit, I thought it might be a little more efficient to start out with just going over the general concepts. Okay, all three commissioners submitted recommended changes to the plan. Those plans, hopefully everyone in the audience knows, and who may be following with us on the internet, have been posted on the county website, each individual commissioner's edits for public review. We went through all three plans, made a comparison. As I mentioned earlier, there are certainly provisions that all three of you agree you would like to see removed from the plan, and then 2 commissioners agree, and then 1. So let's talk about first the concepts that appear in the plan that all three of you commissioners suggest should be removed from the plan. First, the idea that every farm, ranch, and ag use areas should be able to have 2 residential structures, primary and 1 accessory residence, plus 1 land division using the plat exemption. All three commissioners have suggested removal of that requirement so that it would remain at the existing rule, which is the existing plat exemption rule, instead of putting a limitation as suggested on the use of ag land. Similarly, all three of the commissioners have addressed and suggested removal of any provisions or requirements in the plan that would change the existing plat exemption rule. Also, all three commissioners have addressed at one point or another in the plan and suggested removal of provisions that limit residential development in exclusive ag use areas or ag conservation areas. Development should be able to continue and plat exemptions should be available to people in those areas. All three commissioners questioned and or suggested for removal the pieces of the plan that say farming and ranching should be the most important land use in an unincorporated area of the county, County should take steps to protect farms and ranches, prevent loss of ag land to residential, commercial, and industrial development. We've provided some notes to the pages where these concepts appear, and specifically in the implementation period.
Jim, if I could stop you there. Again, having identified that there are areas where all three commissioners have agreement, and then we're going to be going into where the commissioners two have an agreement, and then one where only one commissioner has a proposal. I know that I've kind of jumped ahead of the gun just a moment, but would it be your recommendation that we perhaps maybe take them up as those three separate items for vote?
My recommendation, in working with this plan and trying to find the most efficient way to do it, would be to have the three of you discuss and perhaps make a motion now to direct the county counselor's office to go back and make that edit in the draft plan, and then do that through each section that we're going to talk about, where all three of you agree, where two of you agree, where one of you has brought up an issue, and then, so at the end of the day, the county counselor's office has direction on which edits to make those edits, repost the edited draft plan at that point so that it can be brought back for further consideration.
And for Ms. Marple, I see your hand up, but you will have an opportunity for public comment. Not yet. Ms. Marple?
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation, is to make edits, have the county counselor's office put those edits together, repost the edited document from that point, and then bring that back to the county commission, either to say, we agree with this, we don't agree with that, we want further edits, or vote the plan up and down at that point, up or down at that point.
All right. Again, I kind of jumped ahead of the gun just a moment, but go ahead.
Sure. Well, the final thing I wanted to note is all three commissioners noted the concern that residents in the 3-mile radius or the extraterritorial jurisdiction, the ETJ, currently don't have county elected representation. They do have 2 representatives on the City Planning Commission that are county residents that have been appointed by the city, but currently there's no representatives for that area that either are from elected county representatives or people appointed by the county. So obviously this is an advantage recognized by all 3 commissioners to adoption of the plan, would be to be able to enter into negotiations with the city to address what the rules should be for the 3-mile area.
Okay, very good.
And those are the concepts that all three of you identified as what you would suggest for removal, or this last one, what would be an actual benefit from having adopted a comprehensive plan.
At this time, I would make a motion to adopt the changes where all 3 commissioners have identified an agreement.
Second.
There's been a motion made by Commissioner Cook, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Archer. Before we take vote, we would allow public comment on this motion. So if there is a member of the public that wishes to address the changes to the comprehensive plan in which all 3 commissioners have an agreement.
My name is Carol Marple. My request was that we're all interested in this. We're trying really hard to pay attention. Would it be possible for the public to have a copy of that to follow along with? That's the only thing I was asking. Thank you.
By that, you mean the PowerPoint? Well, it's not really a document. We're going to go through it as we go through it. So, no. So, is there any other public comment on the changes in which all 3 commissioners have an agreement?
My name is Leslie Prentice. My address is 4020 Southeast 37th Street, Topeka, Kansas, 66605. I am on the board of the League of Women Voters of Topeka and Shawnee County. I have been designated to speak to you on behalf of our league and our membership of over 130 Shawnee County citizens. Our league supports the plan, but only as recommended to you by the Shawnee County Planning Commission. Our league, after serious study, has held positions supporting long-range comprehensive land use planning. We have long recognized the adverse effect of the uncontrolled proliferation of piano key houses along country roads. Land use experts have recognized this exurban sprawl as a serious problem. Shawnee County is not unique in having this problem, but it does have a uniquely large one, 3.5 times that in Douglas, Johnson, Sedgwick, and Riley counties. This is probably because Shawnee County, unlike its sister counties, has not acted to solve the problematic aspects of this haphazard development. So why should Shawnee County and others want to curb exurban sprawl? There are two interrelated reasons. First, as studies show, it costs more to provide public services to scattered, low-density building sites than to provide those services to compact, planned residential developments. Second, it costs more to provide public services to piano key houses than the tax revenue it generates. And who pays those extra costs? Not the seller, who benefits from the sale, but the taxpayers of Shawnee County. The end result is that in the future it will cost more to fix and expand infrastructure. But the tax base to raise the money for the increased costs will be less. Then either higher taxes will be required, and people already complain about how high they are, or important public services will have to be denied, which might be happening in Auburn City, where we heard that they don't have the funds to prepare their water system. You read of these problems in the plan, and yet you delete the essential land use planning tools for the exurban sprawl problem, like ending the big culprit, the 3-acre tract exemption. Your deletions of exurban sprawl discussions and tools from the original comprehensive plan do nothing to solve this serious problem. And they strip the original plan of its ability to function as a comprehensive land use plan. That's all I'm going to say right now, but I have more later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Steve Henning. I live out by Auburn. I just have one question. On the provisions that you three requested, the changes, I guess my question is for the county councilor. Say after 2 or 3 years and we have new people on the commission, can those provisions that were removed, can they be put back in again? Can this be modified again later on, is what I'm asking?
The statutory process, the statute requires a process of annual review, and the plan can be, this board could have, at any year before this, adopted a plan, and can, any year after this, modify whatever plan that's adopted. So, yes, this board can legislate on this topic and can do that in the future. So yes, the answer is it can be modified.
Mr. Crowell, is there a statute to indicate how often an annual review should be?
At least once per year at the end of the year is what the statute suggests by the Planning Commission to make a report and recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay. Any other public comments on this item as to the modification of the comprehensive plan where all 3 commissioners have agreement? Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Archer. All in favor say aye. All opposed? That motion passes 3-0.
Okay, now we'll turn to the areas where at least 2 commissioners questioned the concepts presented in the plan. The first one is just the general concept of discouraging growth in rural and agricultural areas, and we've tried to put all the page numbers we could find where this issue appears in the plan. The second one is the concept of requiring public services to be established prior to allowing development. The next is suggesting there has been a loss of economic output due to the loss of ag land. Large rural population disrupts ag operations, or that non-farmers have unrealistic expectations of public service. This concept has been questioned by at least 2 of you, and there are the page numbers that they appear. Another concept is designating county growth areas to push development to certain areas of the county. Coordinating infrastructure must be in place before development can occur. And as you can see, some of these concepts are related. Creation of an exclusive ag use area that limits development in that area or provides the strictest requirements of development. Suggesting the new regulations created by the plan would not be burdensome to landowners. At least 2 of you have questioned whether that's a valid concept. Guided development towards certain areas and updating the zoning code to force such guided development. At least 2 of you questioned putting that into the plan. Supporting the Topeka ETJ UGA by pushing development into those areas to protect ag land outside of those areas. Again, that's been questioned by 2 of you. Discouraging industrial commercial use in certain areas. Adoption of a building code program with enforcement and inspections has been questioned by at least 2 of you. Okay?
And on those areas, commissioners, do we want to take these up individually or as a whole as to whether or not those items should be removed or amended?
I would suggest as a whole.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the changes that have just been outlined.
I will second the motion. Commissioner Bueller, any discussion? Public comment on these items.
I'm Lee Palmer. I come from Auburn Township. This plan would reduce the value of grassland quite. It isn't going to affect farm ground. I have 54 acres of farm ground. I rent it out at a very good price. Pasture land, you're not going to make much money, and from what I'm getting, I won't be allowed to sell any of that, or my kids won't if they inherit it, and make some money on it. But you're trying to save ag land and pasture land. No, you're trying to push the development up in Topeka, and Topeka could do better if they'd fix their streets and fix their crime problem. This plan is, you got to plat something out before somebody can build a house on it. That just costs more money. You're not doing the landowners any favors at all on this plan.
And the last change removed that exemption, so the rules that are currently in place would stay in place if adopted as changed, so that you would still have the opportunities you have today to divide your land.
How many acres to a house?
The current rules would still be in place.
3 acres?
3 acres and with the 200 feet of frontage.
Okay. would you, there's no limit to how many?
As amended, no, the current rules stay in place.
Okay, well, thank you.
You know, plat exemption. Okay, it would stay under the current rules of the plat exemption.
Leslie Prentice again. Clearly another problem arising from the lack of control over exurban sprawl is that people buying these scattered building sites out in the country often have unexpected expectations. I get this because I'm one of them. I've been there for 18 years. The K-State Extension Service gets that this is a problem, and they have published a beautiful brochure that is, by the way, attached to your issue papers, and it talks about the problems you encounter when you move into the county. So that is a problem. An additional crucial goal in the original Shawnee County Comprehensive Plan is the preservation of vital natural resources, including, but not limited to, its prime farmland. Many acres in Shawnee County are ranked by the USDA as among the best farmland in our nation. The plan informs us that we have already lost 30,000 acres of prime farmland in Shawnee County, mainly due to the 3-acre exemption and exurban sprawl. Preserving a region's most important natural resources is a central goal in many successful comprehensive plans, particularly in regions dependent on agriculture or other natural resources, like Oregon's trees and Florida's coastlands. Our county's productive agricultural lands are vital, not just to Shawnee County's economy with its 21% contribution, but to our agricultural state. Ask Senator Roberts if farmland is important to Kansas's economy. Our league recognizes the value of preserving an area's natural resources and beauty for ourselves and our future generations. Your proposed amendments wipe away this common agrarian county land use planning goal without really any comment or revision. If you adopt these deletions, it means that we mindlessly continue to whittle away not only a valuable economic resource, but one of Shawnee County's most appealing natural resources, its lovely and productive agrarian countryside.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Yes, sir, I'd like to make one. My name's Steve Burrell, live at 2731 Southeast 32nd Street. I'd just like to say, we live in Shawnee County. It's an agricultural county. However, it's not Yellowstone National Park. A lot of the vistas and things you see in Shawnee County are in the next county too. Not a big problem. There's plenty of land out there, plenty of land to develop, and the size of a farm depends on what you're doing with it. I mean, I lived in St. Louis for a few years. In St. Louis County, there's a lot of what they call truck farms. They may be 5 acres, they may be 10 acres. The people grow vegetables on those 10 acres, take the produce to town on Saturdays. That's what started the farmers markets and things like that. So anyway, I'd just like to point that out, and I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate your amendments to this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Palmer. I am all for brevity in public meetings, but while I appreciate Commissioner Archer's motion to vote on it all at once, the last one was easy to vote on all at once because all three of you agreed. This time, just from putting all three of you in an awkward position, I don't know if the same two of you are the ones that have the issues with all of them. So just from a, I guess, outrage perspective, although it would take longer, I didn't know if you might consider doing it individually because the same two commissioners might not be the same ones. Just a suggestion, but thank you for your work on this.
might just ask the county councilor if it was the same two commissioners for all of the issues, or if it was different two commissioners as on the issues.
No, there were not, we did not have the same two commissioners on each one of these points.
Any other public comment?
My name's Elmer William Huber, 6237 Northwest 94th Street, and I'm in favor of most of what you're trying to do here, to try and get it so that there is some degree of latitude for the development. I do realize that there's people here that do believe we need to have some sort of control, and I'm thinking that in the future, since this thing could be amended, we could slowly work towards whatever amendments need to be made to make it more, to appreciate their goals of slowing urban sprawl. That's basically me, and I'm for it, and I think most of the people here are for most of this resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on these changes?
I'll be brief, but make one of my points. My name is Marge Ahrens, and I have a long history of concern about urban planning, economics, and the law. And I just want to say that in regard to the objections that I read, if I understand them correctly by reviewing your revisions to the revisions of the plan, were Mr. Cook and Mr. Archer, that you cut sections that the Citizen Committee, the Planning Commission, carefully worked through, word by word, with probably a total of hundreds of hours to deal with your first objections. And then in the end, even after you replaced two of them with people you thought would say no to a plan, voted still to recommend it. And you are cutting and gutting what the Citizen Committee worked very hard to make as its own plan for our community. You fault the contractor, but in truth, those are simply principles of planning that were presented. And the volunteers went through every word. I saw them. And then you go and gut what they have done, and that demeans them as citizens in my mind. It demeans the staff, and I've seen you demean the staff as well. So I want you to consider that, in my mind, you're there to serve the public good, and then you appointed people to represent you, and then you turn around and deny what they've worked so hard to produce for this community. And that's all I'll say right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Archer?
I would point out a couple of things. Nobody put anybody on the Planning Commission with the thought that they would vote no on this comprehensive plan. I disagree with that. Number two, the final vote was 4-3, and 3 of the planning commissioners had very strong reasons to oppose the plan. And then finally, county commissioners have to be elected. We're responsible to the voters, the planning commission members. They work hard, don't get me wrong, and they've spent a lot of time on this, but ultimately we have to respond to the voters of Shawnee County. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ben Marple, and I want to thank you for your decisions. in regards to the last woman, I was at a lot of the hearings. No time, and Carol attended these meetings to change this, no time did Mrs. Mueller take any consideration of what the comments were of the public. So you're right on target, she is wrong. No time was any of that considered or changed, and thank you.
And I might note, too, we do appreciate all of the time and effort that the Planning Commission, that the public, the county councilor, the planning director, and the citizens put into the comprehensive plan. By and large, the comprehensive plan is remaining intact. The changes that we're making are really striking that balance that Mr. Hupner talked to, and trying to strike that balance between development and regulation and being able to control the use of your land. It's a very delicate balance. So, there's...
Good morning, Randall Walker, 2326 Southwest Hodges Road. And I came to listen and have been doing so, and it's obvious that you have been listening too, because you're trying to speak to the concerns that have been voiced by patrons, landowners, and voters. I live on 2326 Southwest Hodges Road, which when we moved out there in 1966 was a rural area. Live in a house built in 1957 on an unplatted lot, which, by the way, has a sewer lateral from my neighbors that intrudes into my backyard. I wonder if that would have happened had we had a plat and that been considered and taken care of first. But the crux of what I want to say is the county is much less rural than it was when we moved here in '64. And I'm one of those guys that used to road machinery from Dover to 21st and Auburn Road and east of there. And I'd have to say, I'm glad I was doing it then and not now. With all the cars and mailboxes, it's really not fun. But again, we thank you and the Planning Commission that worked hard trying to make this plan palatable for those who are here and who have spoken and who will speak. You obviously, again, have tried to address their concerns. I hope that we can, however, keep our eye on the fact that the county does have over 46,500 people, and that number is growing every day. If you don't believe it, just look at the houses and the foundations that are going in and so on and so forth. And I'm just going to say this, and hope it doesn't put a target on my back, because that's not my intent, obviously. But this plan isn't just about how many lots can be sold off. The plan as it was written doesn't really limit the number of lots that can be sold off. It limited the number of unplatted, or the words escapes me, when you don't have a plat, Barry. I've had it written down, but plat exempt lots, thank you. It doesn't really limit the number of acreage or lots that a farmer or otherwise any landowner can sell off their property. And I just want to reflect on that. And I was on the committee that worked for a year on that comprehensive plan. So I'd ask you to hold your applause, please. And just want to tell you that that over a year's work that we put in there, we didn't have an idea that we were going to try to save the county money by clustering houses. Now, the group that the county hired to help us with that, they may have. In fact, they probably did, because that's what they do. That's what planning involves, is try to bring about efficiencies and so on, and we're obviously not ready for some of those. We obviously didn't set out to take landowner rights or put increasing nasty restrictions on anyone, or to save tax dollars by putting, as I said, houses and clusters, but rather to develop a plan that protected agricultural lands and agricultural operations. And we got that because of the input that we got from the patrons at some of these meetings, which, by the way, were pretty poorly attended. We had really, this plan lacked public input because the folks just didn't come to those meetings for various and sundry reasons, some good, some bad. But in any event, we tried to do what the earlier vision statements that was in our books, 7/21/17, and I just picked the three that seem to speak to what most people are talking about and have talked about here. We're trying to promote economic development, tourism, responsible growth and development, and protect agricultural lands and operations. I hope in some way that we can use this plan to speak to the vision statement that results from our conversations. There's a lot of great information in the plan, the 162-page plan, which I went through page by page last week to take all these reductions that were on the internet and put them on a page so they made some sense, and I thank you for trying to make it easier for us. But they all weren't, well, enough said. I guess, and I obviously know that I'm going against the current here, but I respectfully suggest that more plats and fewer plat exemptions might help this plan to be better, even with the reductions, some of the reductions that are there. Might help it to work. For example, one that required a frontage road with a road entry at each end just might make it easy for farmers, for example, not to have to be concerned with 20 mailboxes, 20 driveways, and 20 opportunities for cars to come out and run into their machinery or them run into the cars. And by the way, that suggestion I just gave you came from a farmer friend of mine. I'd close by saying platting is an opportunity to fix problems before they occur. And I think we've gotten ourselves into situations because of uncontrolled plat exemptions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on these changes?
And I'm Lee Palmer. She was talking about the farmers having trouble getting in and out of the fields and all that. Farmers only plant spring. There's no cultivation to speak of. This is not a big issue at all. My farm's on 103rd. There isn't much conflict between farmers and traffic. It's a non-point to me. It doesn't exist. Most of the crops are coming out in the fall. There's only spring and fall is the only time that you see much tractors or trucks on the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on these changes? All right. Motion made then by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Cook.
I do have a question on the second to the last bullet
Yes.
point. If I could have some explanation from the commission. It says discouraging industrial commercial use in certain areas. And when I go to page 104, I do see the language of encourage responsible, not discouragement of. So I'm questioning why we are striking that from the plan.
Jim or Joni, would you be able to address, and as I scroll to page 104?
I know, it doesn't have the tabs on there to make it easy. 104.
As you found in reviewing it, it's difficult to, unless we go line by line like this.
Right.
What we tried to do, identify is every place that these concepts appeared in the plan. If the direction from the commission is, instead of striking an item, changing the language in the item to the way that you suggest, we can certainly do that.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that it's changed, because in the original, or the amended plan that came forward to us, it has the word limit striked out and encourage inserted.
for encourage industrial development to the most suitable locations. Now, that goes to the environmental map and all those types of things. And then the second one is encourage responsible rural commercial development. Again, we do have zoning. We do have laws already in place that limit that, I guess, somewhat. So I'm questioning why we want to strike that.
Commissioner Archer, do you have a, or I guess, Joan, I see.
Joni Fedani, Assistant County Counselor. Part of what we did here was pulled page numbers when we were able to go through and point out topics, and we listed page numbers here. Some of the page numbers may not be exactly perfect. Like Mr. Crowell has said, this is a very complicated situation, going through and trying to find each and every place within this 190-page plan where each of these topics have appeared. So it may be that when we're looking at them on a line-by-line basis, we may not strike the language that you're talking about, Commissioner Bueller. It may be that that appeared on that page, and so we're pointing out that these topics appeared on each of those pages. Okay. And so if the point would be to discourage industrial and commercial use in certain areas, we would then want to look at each of the topics on each of those pages and strike the stuff that prohibits the ability to do industrial and commercial use in certain areas, and instead make it so that it discourages it, or instead of, if it says encourage, then we would maybe keep that there. So as everybody's pointed out, this is complicated. We've had to kind of do it on a line-by-line basis. What we're hoping is that with the direction from the commission, that we can then go through and make the changes and then bring the plan back to you so that you can see it and again vote on it as a whole once we've made changes that are suggested. So if you have some direction that you would prefer, it's possible, I don't know, on page 104 versus 151, 154, 161, the language on each of those pages may be a little bit different. Yeah. And so if on 104 it's encouraging that sort of development, then we could leave that language and strike that page off from this suggestion.
Commissioner Archer?
I was just going to say, I think what you've done is go and look at key themes.
Correct.
And try to incorporate those key themes into amendments to the plan itself. And I know it is a very difficult, complicated job, so thank you.
I'm not quite sure, though, if we strike this language, then we are encouraging industrial commercial use in all areas. That's the question. And so I'm just asking, because I would not be in support of the motion as it currently stands. And that would be my question as to why. Again, this is much like the budget. We're working through it. We're making, motions, and we're not going to get consensus on all things. But then after you have a chance to put it back together, review it again, it will be on another commission meeting agenda, and we will adopt it or not adopt it at that time. But at this time, I can't support the motion because I'm unclear what that means.
Exactly, and we're attempting to find the will of the commission,
Sure.
Make edits off of that to the best that we can, bring that back, and then hope that if there's any more fine-tuning that the commission would like to do in the language, at that point, we'll do it.
Right.
Okay. There is on page 151, Commissioner Bueller, and it says, in all areas, plat exemptions should be prohibited for the following, and it says commercial and industrial land divisions.
And I think my language was discouraged, or that's just it. We have three different versions of it, and so when you go to one,
The version that is...
Is that under your
That is actually
changes?
the comprehensive plan as from the Planning Commission, says on page 151, in all areas, plat exemptions should be prohibited for the following, and it says commercial and industrial land divisions, and that is one of then it goes on to environmentally fragile locations, including but not limited to floodplains, designated wetlands, and areas with steep slopes, and then locations that are economically valuable for commerce. This would include but not limited to freeway, interchange, service areas. That is on page 151. That is on the left-hand column at the bottom of that page.
Left-hand column on the bottom.
So rather than having it being prohibited, it would remove that blanket prohibition on the plat exemptions.
And if I might point out, I'm pretty sure that when we first started putting this PowerPoint together, that this bullet point actually said prohibiting industrial and commercial use in certain areas. And so it may be that page 104 got added on there later because we changed the word to discourage. But I believe that what the two commissioners who had highlighted these to be deleted, the issues were prohibiting industrial and commercial use. And then I'm also pretty sure that a third commissioner also wanted to change the prohibit language to discourage.
Discourage.
And I think that that's why we ended up putting discourage.
Okay.
So it was originally to not prohibit, but then there was also one commissioner who wanted to discourage, and so we put discouraging industrial and commercial use here. And so if we could have clarification about what the three of you would want us to do on that.
And for me, I guess it would be to remove the prohibition of plat exemption and making it a discourage or review as opposed to just a blanket prohibition.
Okay.
Commissioner Archer?
Yeah, that's acceptable to me.
Commissioner Bueller? Would be removing prohibit to make it the discourage.
Okay, I think that's clear.
Okay. So would that be then an amendment then to your motion, Commissioner Archer?
Yes.
Okay. Motion then made by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0.
And at this point, before moving on to the next section, we will have the PowerPoint put on the website too with these page references so people can follow along. And we will make these edits that we interpret the commission to be requesting. But again, everyone will be able to follow along. When we bring the plan back, we can discuss even more what the language is. Instead of doing this in a 10-hour meeting today, line by line, I thought we would try to do it a little more efficiently and then hopefully get us down to a workable document at the end.
Jim, I think that brings us then to areas where we have one commissioner.
Correct. And I would suggest on this section that you go through them individually.
Okay. So if we can then take requiring the need to work closely, cooperatively with the City of Topeka, setting joint policy goals, political alignment. My objection to that is the word require, and instead have the word encourage. I don't like that it's just a blanket requirement that we work with the City of Topeka, but to encourage. I think it's always good for governmental bodies to work together, but it shouldn't be a blanket requirement for us to do so.
And I suspect that's where a lot of these are what I heard from the three of you individually was a lot of concern about mandatory language in the plan, which would tie the county's hands in certain areas.
So my motion would be to substitute the word require for encourage.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. Is there any public comment on this change?
This is a very concerning thing that the league noticed in this plan, or in your amendments. For over a decade, the league has had official positions that advocate cooperation and joint action between Shawnee County and the City of Topeka. Our position includes the following quote from the Intergovernmental Cooperation Council. Through the Heartland Visioning process, the Topeka and Shawnee County community has expressed its desire for local government to work cooperatively and collaboratively, resulting in quality services to citizens and responsible stewardship of public resources. When I looked at the plan, and believe me, I have sympathy for your county councilors, the changes that you made to it, the deletions, there are many deletions concerning cooperation that one commissioner in particular has deleted, and they do little more than call for cooperation between the city of Topeka and Shawnee County. If you are going to change those to say that cooperation is encouraged, I don't see the purpose, frankly, of changing it from encouraged to required, because it should be required. If our capital city and the county can't work together on this plan, then it's not a comprehensive plan. And that's all I've got to say.
Hello, once again, my name's Steve Burrell, and I'd like to point out that I think it's right to change it to encourage, because the county shouldn't be required to take a position in a division or a planning process that puts it at that makes the city able to railroad the county into doing something that shouldn't be done. So that's why I'd say encourage is a good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Marge Arons, and I just want to say that the attraction of a community is built on its unity, its ability to compromise, the consensus it raises it comes to with each other, the communication and respect it has for each other. And our two units of government are suffering in those regards. And I hope that you will not use the plan to drive a further wedge between the city and the county, but instead take seriously whatever word you use to come together for the benefit, including the economic development benefit of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this amendment? Motion.
My name is Bob Collard. I live at 7029 Southwest Indian Hills. My concern was it said it required the establishment of public services before development can occur. The city doesn't even do a very good job at that. Are we going to tackle that as a county? You know, like plumbing inspections, wiring inspections, so on, before you allow development? That's part of public services. Is that what you're desiring? If so, I'd have a question.
No, sir.
Where that can be done.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on that change?
My name is Carl Hubner. I live at 8633 Northwest Landon Road. And the question I have on this is this is changing it from required to making a requirement of the county. What requirement does the city have to work with the county? It works both ways. And I think it ought to be encouraged, not required. Thank you.
Might note that we really have no control over the city, but it would be our hope that they would want to work with us as much as we want to work with them, encourage cooperation. And in many ways, the commission and the city council do work with each other in a cooperative spirit. Motion made by Commissioner Cook to change the word require to encourage. Second, I believe, by Commissioner Archer. Or Commissioner Wheeler. Thank you. I lost track. I apologize. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0.
Next item, questioned by one commissioner, is supporting the City of Topeka's growth management plan for the 3-mile area.
Commissioners, again, this was an item that I questioned. The city's long-range or long-use LEGUMP talked about changing the plat exemptions from 3-acre to 20-acre, changing the frontage from 200 feet to 300 feet. It also talked about the possible use of annexation to grow the city of Topeka. It also talked about directing growth to occur within the city of Topeka or within the 3-mile radius outside instead of outside of that area. And as a blanket rules, those are something that I do not support. But it would, I think those are issues that we've heard from the public that are different than what the county's interest may be. So,
Question. Jim, when the city submitted the LEGUMP to us, we did review it. We did not approve it at that time. It's been a couple years ago.
Right. It was put before you and discussed,
And
if I can recall what the process was.
Right.
But there was no statutory basis for the county to have a veto over that or input over that. Actually, the only way to have input over this 3-mile area and input into those rules is for this body to adopt a comprehensive plan and then trigger a statutory mechanism for requiring a joint committee of city and county to come together and discuss these rules.
Correct. Thank you.
there's then a motion to not support the City of Topeka's LEGUMP.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Archer. Is there any public comment on that item? All in favor say aye. All opposed? That motion passes 3-0.
Another item questioned, the necessity of including goals that discourage development on fragile lands, protecting certain lands, and environmental effects.
Yeah, I think that was mine, and it was just a question of common sense. Who is going to develop on fragile lands? I'm not hardcore about it, so we can leave it as it is, if that's all right with the other commissioners.
Leave as is?
Yes.
All right.
Motion to leave.
Motion to leave by Commissioner Archer. Second. All in favor? Is there any public comment on leaving it as it is? All in favor say aye. All opposed? That motion passes 3-0.
Next item is extending Topeka, the portions in the plan were discussed, the possibility of extending Topeka Metro into the county when city, not county taxes support the metro.
And again, that was mine. My experience on the city council is that the property taxpayers of the city of Topeka pay for TMTA. I don't think it's fair, and I think the MTPO is actually looking at providing service to Manhattan and Lawrence, Kansas City. I don't think the property taxpayers of Topeka specifically ought to pay and subsidize that transit. So that's my issue there.
Now, I'll second it just to get to the discussion, which is, would it be then your desire, Commissioner Archer, that if there was any expansion of bus service or metropolitan transit service into the outside of the city of Topeka, that would then have some be brought to the county so that it would be jointly subsidized as opposed to the city taxpayer subsidizing for county use, or
Are you saying that transport outside of the city of Topeka should be fully allocated as far as the cost goes?
Well, I know that at different points, the bus service has looked at whether or not there should be a bus service to Auburn, to Tecumseh, to out to Montera.
Right.
It's up to Hunter's Ridge, and I know that, we get calls periodically about, I wish that I could have easy bus transport into the city, but I live outside of the city, and the bus service just doesn't, that's outside of their range. And so it's outside of their taxing authority.
Well, exactly, and that's the point, Mr. Chair, is that the city of Topeka property taxpayers should not subsidize transportation outside the city limits.
And so if we were, and so if we are going to be talking about any expansion, number one, that would have to, it would be a legislative change as to that taxing authority.
I think so.
It would be a bigger change than, but that's a much larger issue, and so that's really not before us today. But if at some point we were talking about an expansion of the bus service, that would be subsidized or paid for, contemplated being paid for by the entire county as opposed to just the city subsidizing county usage in those respects.
Yeah, that's what it would have to be, in my opinion.
Commissioner Bueller?
Again, what is the intent? So is it, we are striking that?
Yes.
And so we're saying then at no point in the next year that we would have any discussions with the Topeka Metro about expanding, if there was a need for expansion of transit, that we would not have discussion with anybody in the county about that for bus services.
Not saying that at all. We talked about an annual review of the plan. If it's important to the TMTA, if it's important to the residents of Rossville, Auburn, and everything else, and they want to support a countywide property tax increase to pay for this, then we can discuss it. Otherwise, it's City of Topeka property taxpayers are paying for the service, and I just don't think it should be subsidized outside of the City of Topeka. That's just my view.
And so if we were getting to a spot where Susan Duffy with the TMTA would make a presentation to the Tecumseh Township, and maybe the Tecumseh Township, that's something that they're in favor of, then it would maybe possibly come back to us for action at that point. But not that we would have a directive that we're expanding it into this area. And I think that it has to be, we really need to have a service that is constituent-driven, and see what the need is and see what the desire is, rather than us making a blanket expansion.
That's my view, and that's why I made the motion.
Does that help answer?
We have a metropolitan planning organization where the city and the county sit together and make those plans. But we don't have a planning commission, a metropolitan planning commission for transportation that extends beyond the city limits. It does not go out to the county. So when we are making decisions on transportation, we are making decisions within basically the city limits of Topeka. We are not considering then those impacts of transportation on a county-wide basis. Now, I know this gets into a little bit more than what that's saying there, but as far as even planning transportation projects, transit, Polk Quincy Viaduct, any type of those things, we are not planning on a county-wide basis. Our MPO is just within a certain area around the city of Topeka. So I'm not going to second the motion. You second the motion. I still think that there's some better wording that could express our need to work together with transit and with the MPO to identify transportation issues of concern for the county residents. So,
Commissioner Archer, would you approve a amendment that the county commission does not recommend extending the Topeka Metro into the county unless it's done by a joint interlocal agreement? That is ultimately what we would be talking about, is an interlocal agreement between the city and the county, where then you would have both city and county taxpayers supporting it.
Yeah, I don't know how TMTA is structured to accomplish that, to be honest with you. Do you know, Jim? I know they're an unusual organization. I think they're the only one in the state.
And again, getting to the heart of what you were speaking to is that a city taxpayer would not be subsidizing county bus service. And that's ultimately what you're speaking to. And the comments that I had is, if we were talking about a bus service that is being provided to county residents, we would need some sort of amendment or interlocal agreement, legislative change to accomplish that. So it would be then an amendment to your proposal. So instead of a blanket cut of any metro service into the county, it would be that any expansion of the Topeka Metro into the county would be by interlocal agreement between the city and the county.
That's acceptable.
Would that be acceptable to you?
I think it's
Okay.
getting there, yep.
All right. So the motion then, Jim, does it in a format that you have?
We'll take a stab at it.
All right. Is there any public comment on that item? Mr. Palmer.
I'm violating my own brevity policy I mentioned earlier for my second trip up here. Chris Palmer. The only thing I would suggest is, right now, it's either there or it's not, and then you're talking about modifying it, and this may be theater, but this is a plan. This is a plan. This isn't, you would decide, but you go to the plan as your rules, kind of. If you were to put something on there that the county looks forward, or the county would like to have better transportation options, public transportation options in the county, I mean, something that is idea-like, like that it puts out their idea, rather than adding something in. I mean, that's, either gone or there as is. I just think you could put something conceptually there that doesn't lock you in, but it lets the city know, or the Topeka Metropolitan Transit Authority, lets them know that you're at least interested in looking at that at some point. If you try to put other language in there, it almost ties your hands. I would just think more of a conceptual thing that is positive looking, rather than, well, if we do, we've been into it this way. Just my point.
And I appreciate that, but those comments. Any other public comment on this item? Motion made by Commissioner Archer as amended, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? That motion passes 3-0.
Next item involves references to possible adoption of road impact fees by the county in the plan.
Sure. Is that yours? Well, let me check.
Joni is suggesting to me that that was Commissioner Archer's.
There you are.
I'm drawing a blank, to be honest with you. The road impact fees, would you,
We had a discussion at one point, if you want to release attorney-client privilege on that and
Yes.
have me talk about that. My point to you was, you have to be careful when you adopt road impact fees, because there are legal requirements and limits on that. For example, we cannot, by law, put a road impact fee on a road that's near a quarry to make the owners of the quarry pay for their impact on the road. They lobbied the legislature to get that prohibition on us, so we can't do it. So you just have to be careful when you enact road impact fees, that they are lawful and legal.
Now I recall the
Beyond the political
Yeah.
distaste that you're going to have anyway with adding additional fees, taxes.
yeah, now I recall the conversation.
Where does it say road impact fees, though, specifically on 74 or
And
103? Because I'm not seeing that at all. Just have to get to 103.
Barry Beagle, Shawnee County Planning Department. It's at the bottom of the last column, or the middle column, last paragraph. And it reads, let me just briefly read it. It says, road impact fees could support future roadway improvements as areas transition from rural to ex-urban in such a way as to have those who benefit pay for the cost. So it's just recognizing that it is an alternative way to fund road improvements. It's not advocating it one way or another. It's just identifying it as a potential source that the county could use to fund road improvement, projects.
Barry, but we do already have street benefit districts, correct, within
We do, and they traditionally
subdivisions?
occur within a residential subdivision as
Okay.
platted.
Okay.
And the developer is seeking, to utilize county financing in order to do that. This would be
It's
much
different.
broader, so if we're looking at, suction line roads and things of that nature for which improvements would be necessary. But, like I said, this was not advocating it necessarily, it was just identifying it
As
as
a
part of a
potential.
menu of
Yeah.
potential choices that you could make.
I'll withdraw my complaint.
Okay. I don't know that we need to take any action then, so.
We need to
Next.
stand, though.
All right. Just as a general, at an hour, we do take a moment to stand for 5 minutes. Studies show that at that point, after you've been sitting an hour, it helps get a little circulation to your brain, so you think a little bit better. So we're going to stand for 5 minutes. We're going to keep having our meeting, but just so you guys understand what's happening.
We can't stand.
All right.
Does this mean I should sit?
All right. All right.
The meeting's,
We're still...
the meeting is still going on. The meeting's still going on.
Meeting's still happening, guys. So, all right.
So,
Jim?
The next item that appears is requiring certain infrastructure or development service tiers.
79. Commissioner Archer, I think this may have been yours as well.
Yeah, my concern was that this was common sense, again, that didn't require a discussion item. But would you review quickly?
I believe, Joni Fedani, Assistant County Counselor again. I do believe that the point here was that there were some requirements that before building could occur, that certain infrastructure or, well, first of all, a development of service tiers. I believe that the city of Topeka has development service tiers in certain areas, a 1, 2, 3 method of how the services go into place. And I think that there was a consideration of requiring that we also implement service tiers, as well as having certain infrastructure in place prior to development occurring in an area.
And I think that was the point, was the requirement of that would discourage development within.
But we would want, I have required, again, out and encourage, included in there, we would want to encourage certain infrastructure development, period, just to ensure that we have adequate, again, we have zoning, we have requirements now for septic, we have requirements now for water, those types of things. So if we strike this entire sentence, I mean, even if it's just encourage certain infrastructure development, I think that's covered other places too.
The plan reads on page 79, is it TI4, item 5, consider creating development service tiers in the county to address issues of certainty for developers and to allow residents to have realistic expectations of service provision. And so it's not a mandatory provision, but just something for the Planning Commission to consider the creation of a development service tier, as opposed to a requirement. That's on page 79.
Right, at the very bottom.
And so I think that as written, it's not a mandatory on us, and so I don't see a need for a change from the language as it is.
I'll withdraw my objection.
Okay.
The next item is adopting a capital improvement plan.
The capital improvement plan is on page 78. This is one that I had as and it just reads, consider adopting a full capital improvement plan approved by the Planning Commission to address issues of certainty when developers are trying to coordinate service providers. And I don't know that the county is at the point of a full capital improvement plan at this point. I think this is something to be addressed by the Planning Commission at a later point and maybe taken up by a Planning Commission on a review of the comprehensive plan. That was my objection as to that, having it included at this time.
It just say consider.
But it does say consider.
Yeah. I actually thought that was a step forward.
Okay.
To be honest with you, we don't have a good capital improvement plan, and it is considered, so
I'll withdraw my objection.
Okay.
See, what this demonstrates to the public is that you three do not actually talk about these things outside of the public meeting. We actually follow the Open Meetings Act, and we only work on these things in an open meeting.
That is correct.
The next one is forcing small towns and cities in the county to specify growth in certain areas or annex that development into that city.
Is that mine or yours, Commissioner?
I have, I'm getting to it.
Does this address the concern that was brought forward by the city of Auburn at all? No?
Yeah, and I think that was my recollection
Yeah.
of
Who was that?
There actually was a couple of commissioners that, this one is a broad topic, and so I think individually, each of you touched on it at certain places, but it wasn't necessarily both of you on a certain page had crossed out that area. So it may be that on one page, one of you looked at it, and on another page, another. But the general scheme here is that there was parts of the plan that would create growth and say the growth should go to the city of Auburn, or the growth should go to the city of Rossville, and then that the plan should then annex that into that city. And I know that last time we talked about this, the city of Auburn approached the fact that they can't handle that. And so the question becomes is, are those cities able to handle what this plan is asking it to do?
Okay, Barry Beagle again with Shawnee County Planning Department. I don't know that this is necessarily forcing communities to adopt and embrace, growth that they don't want. Basically, what this was indicating, that as a result of direct conversations with the 4 municipalities outside of the city of Topeka within Shawnee County, 3 indicated that because of large legacy farms that encompass their communities, as well as the established floodplain that encompasses those communities, they really don't have much opportunity for growth and expansion. So they realize that if growth is going to occur, it's going to occur within those communities. The only one that did express a desire to us as the planning team, when we met with the mayor and there's utility superintendent, was with the city of Auburn. And they indicated that as a result of the new lagoon system that was put in place and so forth, that they've got increased capacity from what they used to have. And therefore, they were looking at the opportunity for future growth and development. So in identifying an Auburn growth area, it is saying that the city of Auburn, for whatever that area would be, how broad or how wide it would be and so forth, that the city of Auburn would be able to determine and control, the size of that area and also control what the expectations are for growth and development within that area, with the understanding that they're going to be tying on to City of Auburn utilities and services. And so this was deferring to, instead of Shawnee County just adopting a plan and saying, okay, it's got to all be agriculture up to the city limits, this is allowing and recognizing that the city of Auburn has the opportunity for expansion and giving to them the opportunity to define what that growth and expansion would be. That's what this was doing.
I think, though, that the sentence that jumps out is the sentence that reads, "New residential development occurring in this area should be required to use city utilities and should be annexed into the city as a condition of development."
And the reason why is that otherwise we're stealing from their capacity if we allow 3-acre, 5-acre, 10-acre lots to develop right up to the corporate limits when they have urban services available. They have city water, city services. And therefore, if they have the capability of tying on to city services, then we ought to be protecting that capacity as they define it for future urban expansion. Otherwise, it's cost prohibitive to provide city water and city sewer at ex-urban lot sizes, 3-acre plus.
But wouldn't that then be a requirement that if you were building within that area, that the city of Auburn would be required to annex you in?
The point is that through all of this, what we are suggesting, and again, this was based on a positive conversation that we had with the mayor at the time and their utility superintendent, is that, yes, they are looking for the opportunity to accommodate future growth and development. So if that's the case, we would put the ball in their court to define what the extent and size and shape and form of this Auburn growth area would be. We're just providing for the opportunity to do that within the comprehensive plan. They are still the masters of their own domain. We're just saying that we will work with you, so whatever your expectations are for that growth area outside of the current present city limits of the city of Auburn, we would recognize that. So this is just setting up a dialogue and encouraging an opportunity for recognizing whatever growth and expansion plans the city of Auburn has.
Given that there could be changes in leadership and changes in administration and changes within the city of Auburn or like cities' mindset, rather than having it as a mandatory should be required, if we had it as a neutral, should be encouraged to use city and utilities and should be considered annexed.
And that's fine. That's fine. Again, we were trying to make them a partner with regard to their growth and development expectations, and we would recognize that as part of our comprehensive plan.
So that would be then my motion to modify that to read, new residential development occurring in this area should be encouraged to use city utilities and should be considered annexed into the city as a condition of development.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. Any public comment on this change? All in favor, say aye. Oh, Ms. Aaron's.
One of my concerns about what was X'd out or marked out well, I don't actually know by which commissioner, was any reference to problems associated with not having a comprehensive plan, a land use plan. And for instance, there was a section you couldn't say that if you haven't built the roads already or haven't paid for them upfront, that then later it will be problematic and more expensive to the whole community. And I think in regard to this issue, I think that the consultants knew and people who know about planning understand that it can cost 10 times as much for water to be put in later or sewer to be put in after there is development. And it seemed to me, as I perused what you tried to correct, that you didn't want any reference to existing problems. And that makes it difficult for the public to understand the plan. Why are we doing the plan? Why should there be any recommendations or restrictions? If there aren't any problems, we don't know what they are. So I would prefer that we leave problems in and that we explain to the public that indeed there will be huge costs if developers or individuals do not understand that they have to be subsidized, perhaps in years in the future, for basic services, that a 2-inch water line does not put out a fire, and that they will pay higher insurance costs as a result of living where there is just a 2-inch water line. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Sorry. I'd like to address that. I'm a Category 10 fire. My insurance is really high, and you know what? I like where I live. I don't care. I mean, I have a lagoon because the perk test was real tight on my ground, so the lagoon was the way to go. But anybody that moves into the country realizes that. They're going to pay the extra money for a water meter, they're going to pay the extra money for a lagoon or a septic system. You're going to pay more in insurance. You got to keep your car up to date more because you got to drive clear into town to go to work every day. We accept that. That's part of, we're good with that. That's the reason we live there. We want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
References involved in creating housing options across all price points.
I'm sure that was mine. My view is that the market determines what housing is developed, and I don't know that we need to get involved in the housing business in Shawnee County. So I'll move to approve that.
The reference is on page 122. And it reads that the Shawnee County must produce additional housing options across all price points to enable movement in the market.
What section is that? Where are you at?
It is on page 122 on the right-hand column. It does go on to read on the second paragraph on the right-hand column, in Shawnee County, this means focusing on affordable options while letting the market produce higher-end homes. And so, Commissioner Archer, is it then your comment that Shawnee County Commission should not have any input as to those affordable options, but it should all be market-driven?
Yeah, essentially that's correct. I don't know what impact we would have, Shawnee County. We're not in the housing business. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay. Barry, if you Do you have any insight as to what the Planning Commission was looking at or thinking about in this area?
Well, the housing chapter gave a composite view of housing throughout Shawnee County, including the city of Topeka, the smaller cities, and the unincorporated area. And it recognized, based on tenure and price points, where we have deficiencies within the community, both in terms of affordable housing for those who have lower incomes, as well as the gaps that exist at the higher income categories. And instead of just saying, okay, that's nice information, moving on, it recognized that, okay, maybe this is an opportunity that we could recognize that, and it would be an opportunity for those within the communities that may not be aware of it, that they could concentrate on providing for affordable housing, or that they see that there's a need in the unincorporated area in particular because of income levels to accommodate the upper end of the housing spectrum. So it was not suggesting or advocating that we get into housing programs or anything of that nature. It's just advancing information about the housing arena that exists within Shawnee County and letting the market then respond to that based upon the information that's within the plan.
Okay. Commissioner Archer?
Well, what specific actions could Shawnee County take to improve affordable housing?
Well, many counties within the state of Kansas employ a neighborhood improvement program as authorized by the state. And so they provide for housing opportunities, and through the program, then there's opportunities that those within the lower income spectrum can get into the housing market that otherwise they probably would not have the opportunity to do without these neighborhood improvement programs.
And that's a county program?
Those are county programs, yes. And a lot of western and central Kansas counties have these neighborhood improvement programs in place. But I'm not necessarily advocating that would be the case here. Again, this is mostly just bringing forward the information that recognizes that we have these deficiencies within the market. And if the market can absorb these deficiencies and provide for the opportunity to provide for more affordable housing for those who need it, or for the upper end of the spectrum, and that's what this information is indicating.
Motion made by Commissioner Archer. Is there a second on that motion? Motion then dies for a lack of a second. I will just say that I don't really see it as directing us or not directing us to take any action, but, and that's the reason why I haven't seconded the motion.
Yeah, and there's mention of the marketplace in several points, so I'm fine with the language.
Next item.
I'm going to have Joni come back up on this one. This one, obviously, we've been discussing this, and that's new plat exemption requirements. Can you kind of explain why that's set out as a separate category here?
Okay, so on this topic, again, each of you addressed this in various capacities throughout the plan. What happened in several topics was that there was the creation of new plat exemptions by encouraging the ETJ. So within the ETJ, then you would have the 300-mile, or 300 feet. Sorry, I've been reviewing this plan for a really long time. 300 feet, as well as a 2-to-1, the changes that the city made. And so those were some of the plat exemptions that were struck by at least one commissioner. Other issues addressed not allowing plat exemptions in areas at all, and that was struck by one commissioner or another. I'm trying to recall if there were other specifics. It occurs on multiple pages throughout the whole plan, but the concept that was addressed by at least one commissioner, if not each of you throughout the plan, is that you wanted to keep the plat exemptions the way that they are right now. And throughout the plan, there's various methods of changing those plat exemptions, and the suggestion was that we just leave all of those the same and not change anything from our existing plat exemptions at this time.
Sorry, tag. The only thing I'll reference with regard to this, any reference to 300-foot frontage, a lot depth to width ratio, minimum acreage requirement of 20 acres, that is because we're talking about that is the regulation imposed by the city of Topeka within the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. We, at this point, unless we go a different route and enter into an interlocal agreement, or we exercise our authority under statute to form a joint planning committee, that is the rule that exists within the 3-mile ETJ. And so the plan was just recognizing the fact that depending upon where you are within the county, inside or without the 3-mile area, if you're within the 3-mile area, well, then the 300-foot frontage requirement applies, as well as the lot depth to width ratio. Nothing more, nothing less. Wasn't pontificating on that. It's just saying that that's the rule that's currently in place.
But with the adoption, if there is an adoption of a comprehensive plan, there's a statutory provision for this county to be able to address that 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction, either through statutory authority or by a joint county-city planning commission.
In reality, the county commission could adopt a resolution today to do that without this comprehensive plan. You have the ability to adopt a resolution, and within 60 days it goes to the city council expressing the intent to form a joint planning committee and for the county to extend its subdivision regulations into the 3-mile area. So you could do that without the benefit of this comprehensive plan, if that's what you wanted to go. But that would only address the division of land. It would not address zoning, building, utilities, or any of those other factors that also go into making development decisions.
Commissioners?
So I guess to wrap this back up, we're looking for guidance on what you want to do with references in the plan to plat exemption requirements.
I think that the commission has been fairly direct that we want to leave the things the way they are presently, and if there is the ability to have that apply to anybody outside of the city of Topeka, that it would be applied uniformly, but also understanding that there is in place the long range, the LEGUMP at this time.
I would agree.
Okay.
So I'll move to approve.
So, and approve it as stated?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Bueller?
Creating new,
All right.
To clarify,
Yeah.
you're asking us to remove references that might suggest a change in the existing plat exemption rules.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. Motion made by Commissioner Archer. I will second that. Any public comment? All in favor, then say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
The final topic of discussion, other than simply some typos, would be creation of an agricultural conservation area, as the concept appears on pages 101, 105, and 154.
Getting over to This was one that I had, I believe the edit that I had made or suggested, and again, establishing a directive on an agricultural conservation area in it being more directive than permissive. And that was specifically saying that the plan recommends that residential development in the area occur on vacant residential parcels of record established prior to plan adoption. And it seemed to be very restrictive on any future consideration. Not that we shouldn't have any consideration for the environment, but just that it was very directive that we would not have any future development in an agricultural conservation area.
I'll move to approve.
And when you say motion to approve the change as...
The change, yes, I'm sorry.
The removal then of the agricultural conservation area,
The entire paragraph?
the paragraph. I would second. Discussion on the removal of the agricultural conservation area paragraph.
There's no public comment on that?
I didn't know if you had...
No.
All right. Yes, Ms. Ahrens.
I wonder if there is a way in which it can be put into the plan that careful consideration of developments proposed in USDA-designated prime agricultural land receive special consideration, that the Planning Commission and you keep that in mind before approval of taking prime agricultural land for development.
And I believe that in the plan, there are references to environmental considerations, and this is in addition to those environmental considerations, the creation of an agricultural conservation area.
Barry, do you have any comment on that at all?
I guess if I could start with just a quick question, and that is that in referencing on page 101 that the agricultural conservation area as defined on the future land use map be deleted, then it's referring to the removal of any reference to the agricultural conservation area throughout the entire document then. Is that, so it's more than just deleting it here, it's
Right.
any reference to the agricultural conservation area? Yeah, so that's, I know, but this paragraph was specifically referenced. That's why I just wanted to
Right.
make sure that it was deleting all of it.
Yes.
Okay, okay. The natural resources chapter does reference, agricultural land use and many of the characteristics of agricultural land use. There's varying stages or class suitability ratings that go along with defining different soil types. But it also does put in a development suitability criteria whereby, if there's, the more prime, the more suitable the farmland is, then that's an area that is encouraged to be preserved for that purpose as opposed to being allowed for residential development. So I don't know if that's exactly the clarification you were looking for, Commissioner Buehler. But there is a map within the plan as well that does define prime farmland and farmlands of statewide significance. Those are two categories of farmland classification and can be used for purposes of helping to redirect growth if need be, so that those areas could be preserved or retained for farming operations.
I'll let it stand for now. I'm going to take a little more look into it, though, as well.
All right.
Okay.
Any other public comment?
The League of Women Voters would not support taking out every reference to creation of an ag conservation area. And we would very much want to see the prime farmland and the category immediately under that have special consideration before development takes place on that land.
Any other public comment?
Well, I'd like to say, my name's Steve Burrell, and I'd like to say that it comes down to whether you have skin in the game or not. If you own the property that's being subjugated to restrictions on further development, as opposed to somebody who's, well, a voter, but then again, doesn't live there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
I would like to say that we all have skin in the game when it comes to our agrarian countrysides and to our economy, and this is 21% of our state's economy, our county's economy.
Motion made then to remove the creation of an agricultural conservation area by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Cook. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0.
Finally, we just have some clerical and factual edits to make. We've just identified them here. I'd request a motion to make those changes.
I would move to make the clerical and factual edits.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Cook. I think Commissioner Archer got there first. So second by Commissioner Archer. Any public comment on these items? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? It then passes 3-0.
Finally, I would request a motion setting the date 2 to 3 weeks down the line so that my office has plenty of time to make those edits, post this PowerPoint that we went through today, post what we believe are the edits that were made by the commissioners this morning, give the public and the commissioners time to digest that and see what the plan looks like, and then come back for further action.
Jim, would your office prefer October the 24th, or sorry, September the 24th or October 1st?
October 1st.
Okay.
And let me explain that. This document is not in an easily editable format like Word or something that we normally work with, so it's a lot more tedious to work with.
Well, that's not necessarily.
Well, it is, as you want to talk to the people who've been working on it.
Barry, before you inject, so the way that this is set out, it's in a program called Adobe InDesign, and our IT department has that program. However, they have the plan from RDG in its original format before all of the changes that were made by the Planning Commission and all of the changes that have been made here. There's a lot of stuff that has to be changed, and we prefer to not we prefer to not ask the IT department to sit through this plan and try and figure out what all of these changes mean. And so what our office is doing is we are going to be putting on the agenda a request to get that program in our office so that our office can do all of the edits and make those changes in-house so that we have the ability to move language around, change the paragraphs the way that they need to be, reformat, because this isn't just going to be striking language out at this point. It's going to be reformatting everything to put it back into a plan to bring back for you guys to, again, reread and then consider and then either approve or deny at that point. And so it takes a lot of effort, and we haven't been able to make any substantive changes to the plan because it's in a program that we cannot change. All we were able to do was highlight, and that doesn't take stuff out, and then the spacing's going to get all messed up, and we're going to have to reconfigure it all.
Hearing that, I've got nothing further to add.
The motion then would be to have the counselor's office take these changes, reformat them, and then have this come back before the county commission on October the 1st of 2018 for consideration of approval of the comprehensive plan as amended. Motion made by Commissioner Cook.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bueller. Since this is the last item regarding the comprehensive plan, if anybody who hasn't had a chance to talk but wants to have the opportunity to address the comprehensive plan,
I'm Judy Moeller, Chair of the Planning Commission, and in the words of Randall Walker, hold your applause. I don't agree with many of the changes. I do agree with some of them, but I want to thank you so much for this thorough discussion. It's really what I wanted to see. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Carol Marple. I'd like to also thank you for the changes, and I just have a question. If this does pass, are we prepared to fund it? And are we going to fund it, and are we going to enforce it? And if so, how are we going to fund it? Thank you.
Great questions for October the 1st. All right.
Commissioner, is this the first reading, or is the, because it has a home rule resolution on there, this is not the first reading then,
No.
correct? The first
You would
reading
be-
will be the amended?
My intent with
Okay.
what I recommended
Okay, I
is
wanted to
that
make sure.
this body be able, if it's ready, on October 1st to make an adoption of the resolution incorporating the plan.
So it would be,
It would be available to be adopted on the 1st. You don't have to adopt it on the 1st. You might find additional changes. You might have a different recollection from what I do as to what the commission, what the will of the commission was on a certain item, or you might reconsider something.
right. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Commissioner Archer.
Mr. Chair, I have to say something respectfully. In going through this process, it has struck me that the planning director and the county commission seem to be on two totally different tracks. And that concerns me greatly, and I think that needs to be resolved soon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, I hope that all of you return on October the 1st, and those of you that aren't able to return, please let your voice be known. You can contact the county commission either by email, by letter, by telephone, or personal appearance. We encourage all of you. The comment was made earlier about a lack of public comment during the planning process. We've had a lot of public comment since it's come to our desk. And so if the goal was to have public engagement, we're getting there. So, again, I look forward to seeing you all back on October the 1st. Madam Clerk?
Are you going to have a
If-
recess to see if they want to leave?
Let's take a 2-minute recess, or 5-minute recess, to allow everybody who doesn't wish to stay for the rest of the commission meeting to leave. So we will be recessed until 10:55. Recess, and Madam Clerk, our next item.
Item 3, consent agenda.
There are 5 items on the consent agenda. Are there any questions?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Archer,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item 4, new business. A, County Clerk, number 1, consider all voucher payments.
The vouchers are totaling $9,461,855.26. Large amount of that is with debt service, $5,781,363.75. We also have JADO payment in there with $682,218.10. And under pass-through, the total is $677,480.65. That's combined for 2 items with the East Topeka Learning Center, one with Champion Builders and one with Train Parts Center. But I have no questions. I'll move approval.
Motion for approval by Commissioner Bueller.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Archer. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item A2, consider correction orders.
I'll move for approval of correction orders.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item B, District Court, number 1, consider approval of request to purchase jury box chairs, witness box chair, and council chairs and table for Division 15 at a total cost of $19,509.90, with funding from the 3rd District Court's fiscal year 2018 budget.
Good morning. I'm Evelyn Wilson. I am Chief Judge for the 3rd Judicial District Court of Shawnee County, and these are for the cost of new furnishings for Division 15, which is going through construction upgrade later this fall. This request is only for those new furnishings, which is within our 2018 approved budget.
And just a couple of questions I had was, it is within the 2018 budget already.
Yes.
And in Division 15, this is where we did have a jury chair that failed or broke.
It was actually a table that broke, the chair leg, or the table leg broke, and nobody was hurt, but these furnishings do need to be replaced, and in conjunction with the remodel, we think it's a good time.
Questions regarding this item?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item B2, consider approval of request to replace 40 chairs in the Clerk of the District Court's office at a total cost of $13,927.60, with funding from the Clerk of the District Court's fiscal year 2018 appropriations.
Move to approve, or I would like for this to be approved. Wish I could move. Thanks, I'm the new interim court administrator too, so I'm not used to this. But we have a lot of hardworking people in the clerk's office, and it's a job where while they're busy, they're sitting down most of the time, 40 hours a week, and the chairs are just wearing out after some years, and so we would ask for the approval. This amount is within our already approved fiscal year 2018 budget.
Commissioners, I will tell you that I did have some questions regarding this item and spoke with Mr. Heidovitz before he departed for, I would say sunnier weathers, but he's going to Florida. But before he departed, and the cost of the chair winds up being just a little over $340 per chair. It's under a state contract. These are 40 chairs that we replaced 4 years ago, but the chairs that we have currently are cracking, are breaking, arms are falling off, casters are breaking. These are of a higher quality, and they also have a lifetime warranty. And so I know that the clerk of the district court has looked into this to make sure that we have chairs that are going to last for more than 4 years and of high quality. So I would move for approval of the request to replace the 40 chairs.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Archer. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item B3, consider authorization and execution of contract C-275-2018 with SHI for support services to maintain the operating systems of the web server, document management, development, and data storage systems for 1 year at a one-time fee of $2,729 from the court's 2018 budget.
Commissioners, this is basically a maintenance agreement. Quote is to renew the court's support agreement used to maintain these operating systems on the web server, document management, development, and data storage systems. These systems are all vital to the daily operations of the court. And if you approve, the service will run from September 22 through September 21 of 2019, billed as a one-time fee of $27.29. Monies have been budgeted for the contract in our 2018 budget.
Questions regarding it?
I move approval of the contract.
Motion for approval by Commissioner Bueller.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Archer. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item.
Item C, planning number 1, consider approval of resolution number 2018-46, amending the district zoning classification from RR1 Residential Reserve District to an M1 two-family dwelling district on property located at 8229 Southeast California Avenue in Williamsport Township.
Commissioners, Barry Beagle, Shawnee County Planning Department. The issue before you is request to reclassify an approximate 5-acre parcel for property located at 8229 Southeast California Avenue from RR1 to M1 two-family dwelling district. The reclassification is sought by the applicants to accommodate construction of a second dwelling unit that would be attached to their home and provide dwelling space for aging parents. And so that's the specific nature of this particular request. This request did appear before the Planning Commission on August 13th, and was recommended for approval by a vote of 5 to 1. So, be happy to answer any questions you may have with regard to it.
Any questions regarding this item?
I'll move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion to adopt the resolution by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Bueller. Is there any members of the public wanting to speak on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Wait.
Yep.
I am Dave Smith, and I live at this residence, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, the motion passes 3 to 0 to adopt the resolution. Our next item.
Item C2, consider approval of resolution number 2018-47, authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit to establish a fishing preserve for commercial recreational purposes on property currently zoned RR1 Residential Reserve District and located at 118 Northwest Hodges Road in Silver Lake Township.
Barry Beagles, Shawnee County Planning Department. As indicated, this is a request for a conditional use permit to utilize the property as a fishing preserve for commercial recreational purposes for property located at 118 Northwest Hodges Road. This request did appear for public hearing on August 13th. It was recommended for approval by a vote of 6 to 0. The resolution, which is part of the packet, does include reference to 6 recommended conditions of approval that go along with this request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have.
Barry, I know that this was an item that gathered some discussion and consideration as to the roadway, whether or not this is a public road or not, or whether or not the road would be have a gate denying access or not have a gate, or vacated or not vacated. What is the current status of this roadway?
Where we are right now, as a matter of fact, no one was more surprised than I was to discover that Hodges Road was now a public versus a private road, or vice versa, when this process began. So it was as a result of this project coming forward that it set in motion the discovery with regard to Hodges Road in its present condition. As a result of going through this process involving Silver Lake Township and the Silver Lake Township trustee, anyway, it was discovered through the Public Works Department that Hodges Road has, since the late 1800s, been a public dedicated roadway, and it exists to this day as an open public roadway. There's been some dispute and disagreement with regard to that, but at this point, in conversations with Public Works as well as the County Councilor's Office, we are in agreement that Hodges Road does exist as a public roadway. There has been a gate that was installed at 13th Street across Hodges Road. That gate has been removed by the applicant in response to the question of Hodges Road. However, I think that there's still some ongoing interest on the part of the township as well as the applicant and other adjoining property owners to see if there's any option for considering the vacation or declaration of Hodges Road in some other fashion that would allow the SACs to control access to their property. But at this point, Hodges Road is formally a public open roadway, and the roadway would have to remain open.
So if we were to approve the conditional use permit, the applicant would not be able to put up a gate blocking access to the roadway?
Correct. And if you want further clarification, I'd be happy to defer to the County Councilor's Office with regard to that, but yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right. At this point, are there any members of the public wanting to speak on this conditional use permit application?
This is Joel Riggs, attorney at law here in town. I'm here with my clients, the Saxes, who are the applicants, and I just is going to respond to any questions the commissioners might have with respect to this issue. But to address the issue with respect to the gate has been taken down by the applicants. It's our understanding that there's a dispute between the county and the township with respect to basically whether it was a public road and whether it was going to be maintained by the township. As Mr. Beagles just indicated, based upon his inquiry and the county counselor's office inquiry into this issue. They've made a determination that it is a public road. That's why we took down the gate. There is, at this time, we just request the application for the conditional use permit be granted, and then we can follow up with the township and also the county as to there's going to be any change in the status of the road, which depends upon, I think, additional ongoing communications with the township. It's my understanding from reviewing the materials that were available to our office that Mr. Beagle had suggested some conditions for the use of the property. The applicants are willing to comply with all those conditions of use, so that kind of takes it out of the sphere of having this ongoing dispute. And we also have an understanding that if additional action is taken with respect to the classification of the road, that the conditional use application issue would be considered by the commission, and so we're well aware of that issue as well. And so we think it's kind of a two-step process that we're going through, but at this time it would be appropriate, and the clients, the applicants, request that the conditional use permit be allowed. And if you have any questions, I could try, but more likely my clients would be better able to answer any questions you might have regarding the use of the property.
My understanding in doing some background preparation is that the gate was placed up some significant period of time ago, and it was to use to limit maybe unwanted activity that was occurring in an isolated part of the county.
Yeah.
Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding from reviewing the documents. If I say anything wrong, I'm sure the Saxes will jump up and correct me, but I believe that there are actually two gates. From looking at, if you, the agenda materials have like an aerial view of the area. Hodges Road, I mean, these directions are not cardinal by any means, but generally comes south towards the river, and then when it hits the river, it starts traveling, I think, gets to the east. And that's where the client's property is. And I think there was a gate further down the road, and then there was a gate also at the, basically what I'd call the start of Hodges Road, where it hits, what is it, 13th? Yeah, and there was a gate there, and that's the gate that was removed, and it was put up at what time, I don't know, but to keep people that were going in and trashing the area and that sort of thing. Because there's only, my understanding, 4 property owners off this road next to the river.
And my understanding is then further that the concern of the township is that they had not been maybe maintaining the roadway, and that if we are having this roadway open to the public, that they would then have some responsibility for maintaining the roadway, but also if we are operating a facility as requested by the conditional use permit, we would need to have it open so that emergency equipment or other fire or ambulance or whatever would be able to get to the property.
That's correct. There was, and part of the discussions we've had with the county counselor's office and with Mr. Beagle's office indicated that access to the property, public access to the property, I think regardless of whether there was going to be very limited commercial use of the property, if by having the gate up would be violating that regardless. So I think that's given that the county has made a determination that going back, I guess they found a document from 1870 or so that indicates that this is a public roadway, and it'll be up to the county or to the township to start doing a little more to maintain it, and/or have it be a minimal maintenance road, which is another issue that would have to be addressed after the conditional use permit was granted.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Riggs? All right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, Jim Crouch, Shawnee County Councilor, I just wanted to very quickly acknowledge, yeah, we have been working in the background through Joni and through the planning office on this issue, and I want to thank the SACs for filing in this application and going through the process. It's not always the most fun process and can be a little bit tedious, but I think in the long run, it's in their best interests as well as the best interests of the public to get all these issues out in the open and addressed. And so thank you for going through this process.
Is there any other persons present that wish to speak regarding this conditional use permit application?
I just want to,
And I see some of our partners at the back of the room. Any input or comments? All right.
I have a question
Mr.
for
Bueller.
Barry.
Yes.
Barry, I have a question for you. And just to make sure for the record, there was no protest by property owners surrounding, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
No protest.
Okay, because and we haven't done this for a while, but I did have ex parte communications with the Sachs family, and they're wanting to do the conditional use permit for their business, and but it was before the conditional use permit was even applied for. But I do appreciate you being here this morning and for sitting through a long meeting as well. I apologize for that, but it's exciting what you're doing on the property, and I wish you all the best. So.
Is there a motion then to approve?
So moved to approve, to adopt the resolution.
Yes, if you,
Hi, Sarah Sachs-Jepson. I'm partial owner of the property. I just wanted to let everybody know that part of what we've used the property, the commercial use of the property, last year alone, we donated to the Junior League of Topeka their silent, or I'm sorry, actually it was their live auction item to have a weekend stay at our cabin. We also donated to the Rock Chalk Round Ball Classic, which helps support children with cancer. And then we also donated to the March of Dimes, a weekend stay for that too. So although it's commercial, we are trying to use this to help with other nonprofit organizations. We've also worked very closely with some of the local downtown, Robbie, what is it? The Heartland Visioning, Activate the River. We allowed several community members to come to our property to see the river and to experience kayaking on the river. So, you know, those aren't things that we profited from at all. So a lot of the, like I said, the commercial use that this property is used for really is more so out of the giving of our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you.
motion to approve the conditional use permit by Commissioner Bueller.
I'll second and say
Second by
thank-
Commissioner Archer.
Thank you, Sarah.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? It's approved 3-0. Our next item.
Item D, Sheriff's Office, number 1, acknowledge receipt of correspondence from Sheriff Jones indicating renewal of a contract C-276-2018, with Brown Super Service for towing from September 1, 2018 to August 31st, 2019, at an annual cost of $12,600 from the Sheriff's budget funds.
Good morning, Commissioners. I was just making sure it was still morning.
Yeah, I know.
This is just a renewal of the contract that we have with Brown Super Service. We did have to make some minor changes in the contract to be in compliance with the home rule resolution regarding towing, but it's a one-year contract. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions regarding the contract?
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Second.
Motion to acknowledge receipt by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item D2, acknowledge receipt of correspondence from Sheriff Jones regarding the purchase of 4 2018 all-wheel drive Chevy Tahoes at $36,552.25 each, for a total price of $146,209 from the 2018 Sheriff's budget.
Again, good morning, Captain Hoover with the Sheriff's Office. We will be purchasing 4 Chevy Tahoes off the state contract. They were vehicles that were still available on the lot this late in the year, and we had some money available and they were off the state contract. Our fleet, we do our best to make sure we maintain a proper fleet that's safe for all the officers to drive and respond to these calls. We drive approximately 2 million miles a year, and our average vehicle average is right at 56,000. So when you take into account all the new vehicles that we have purchased and then the ones that are well over 100,000 miles, is to replace some of the higher mileage vehicles. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions regarding this? I'll move to acknowledge receipt.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Our next item.
Item E, Public Works Solid Waste. Number 1, consider approval of request to award the bid for 20,000 gallons of calcium chloride for snow and ice control purposes to Scottwood Industries at a total cost of $22,800.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Flanagan, Public Works. Scottwood Industries was our sole bidder for this. We've used them for the past several years, and we would recommend award of the contract.
Any questions regarding this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Archer, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Thank you, Tom. Our next item.
Item F, Commission. Number 1, consider appointment of Shane A. Hilton to the Tecumseh Township Board as clerk due to the resignation of Dave Sturbins.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Hennessy, Tecumseh Township trustee. Just, I think it was self-explanatory. Just wanted to see if you had any questions.
We did receive a letter from Ruth Graham and speaking to the appointment of Mr. Hilton, as well as a correspondence from Mr. Hilton expressing his interest in serving in this capacity. And so I would move to appoint Mr. Hilton to the Tecumseh Township Board as clerk.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item.
Item F2, consider reappointment of Kevin Gardner to the Board of Directors of the Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging, Inc. for a 3-year term beginning October 1, 2018 and ending September 30, 2021.
I would move then for the reappointment of Mr. Gardner to the Board of Directors.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Archer. Beat you again, Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item 5, Administrative Communications.
Commissioners, I had asked Mr. Kuda, he's been patiently waiting and taking up all of his time, but thank you for coming here, and I asked him to speak on quality of place. This will be an announcement made today with the Commission, also with City Council, and then on Wednesday with JADO. But Kurt, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Kurt Kuda, and I'm the chair for the Quality of Place Work Group that is part of the Momentum 2022 Community Development Plan. Over the course of the development of the plan and now the implementation, it's become very clear that quality of place is now kind of the fourth leg of the stool for economic development. Earlier this year, JADO approved via a resolution several criteria that would be applied to potential projects that would apply to quality of place initiatives. I believe that was approved in May. And really the intent on this is for some of the carryover funds held with JADO/Go Topeka would be put through a process, and if the criteria is met and it goes through an approval process, some of those funds could be applied to quality of place initiatives. It is the intent that those funds would only provide a portion of the funding, whether it be the establishment of the project or the ongoing funding. Today, I'm here to provide an announcement of sorts that process is now underway. As Commissioner Cook indicated, I'll also be attending City Council tomorrow night and then JADO on Wednesday to kind of close the loop on all of this. This week, we'll start taking applications for projects that may apply to this criteria. Information on this can be found on the Go Topeka website under the Momentum 2022 tab. Within that is not only some detail on the process itself, but the actual resolution that was adopted by JADO back in May. These prospective projects can begin to apply, like I said, initially or this week, and with a deadline of around October 8th is the thought process on that. After those applications or overviews are then screened by the Greater Topeka Partnership staff to make sure that they fit most, if not all, that criteria, then those overviews and potential projects will go to a panel that will then review those and interview those potential projects and provide recommendations then to go through the next steps of the process. And I'll stop there with the panel. And this is another one of those situations where I guess if you get up and speak at JADO, you end up finding yourself getting volunteered. It was suggested that my work group that I chair, it's not my work group, the Quality of Place work group, would provide the personnel for that panel. What we did from there is we assessed what would be an appropriate criteria for that panel. So we began to make sure that we wouldn't have many conflicts of interest or none at all. So with that in mind, there will be no city, no county, no government employees on that panel. We also ensured that there would be no Greater Topeka Partnership staff on that panel. Then other than myself, there would be no Go Topeka board members on that panel as well. So it'll be made up of really private citizens, and we're trying to make sure it's a diverse group. I hope today, when we have our Quality of Place work group meeting at 1 o'clock, I was getting a little worried I wouldn't make that. I'll get the final list of those individuals, and we'll certainly provide that with the follow-up updates on that. But we thought what we try to do is get 5 to 7 individuals from a diverse background to help with that process. That panel will, like I said, meet with the qualified applicants starting around October 22nd and go through that, and then we'll provide recommendations up through the Go Topeka Executive Committee and the board with the intention of getting it to JADO for final review and approval in December. And if we can keep to that schedule, that'll be very impressive that this started kind of as an idea a little over a year from that time frame and actually get something done. And so I think that'll be a testament to, I think, the alignment that's happening in our community and in our county to keep the momentum going for our community. So that's my report this morning.
Thank you very much, Kurt. Any questions for Kurt?
No, but thank you for your volunteering. Thank you for the concept. It sounds exciting. And thank you for bringing it here first. Thank you, Kurt.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Kurt. It's not volunteer, it's voluntold.
Voluntold.
It is at some point.
I use that term and I agree.
Yeah. So thank you for waiting this
Yes,
morning as well.
really.
Thank you.
No worries. Thanks.
Any other administrative communications this morning? Department heads or members of the public that have any items to bring to the commission? Commissioner Bueller, anything?
Do not, looking forward to JADO on Wednesday.
Yes. Commissioner Archer, anything?
Yeah, JADO, too. That's it.
All right. On Thursday, I understand that Kellen Seitz was here earlier, that we have our first hockey game, and they had a scrimmage over the weekend with over 500 people showing up for a scrimmage.
Good.
So hopefully that's indicators of some hockey support and rebirth of hockey spirit in Shawnee County.
Good point.
So, any other items for today? Not our next item.
Item 6, executive session.
There is a need for an executive session for personnel matters of a non-elected personnel, specifically for interview of a public works director. And I would move that we go into executive session until noon, knowing that we may need to extend further for the interview.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? We are adjourned into executive session until noon. Jane, if you want to grab that note from my desk, you can.
I'm terribly sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, we just not.
Are you going to pass it?
Well, I thought, Commissioner Archer could get his kin's note.
Well, this is the guy that went to swim in Lake Shawnee.
He was here.
I read it.
I'm surprised he didn't get up and talk.
Well, I fear he's one of Commissioner Arthur's brethren.
I think it's yours, Kevin.
Oh, gosh.
He's my constituent.
Chris, we had one that was the sheriff's, and we didn't mark it, I don't believe, for signature, even though we assigned it a contract number. Is that a problem?
Say that again. I thought if they acknowledged that you didn't have to have.
Right, we just assigned it a contract number because Cindy has asked for that. We didn't put a signature line on it.
Okay, I
The
don't think
sheriff.
that's, I don't know.
I talked to Cindy Harper about it, but I think we agreed that there didn't need to be a signature
Right.
line. Cindy Harper just lost her niece unexpectedly.
Oh, no.
Her niece?
Yeah.
Hmm. Was there anything else for me to sign?
No?
Wow.
Got a couple more minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. What are you guys doing for lunch today? Did you bring your lunch?
Driving to Holton.
Oh.
Is there a special there or something?
You going to Holton for lunch?
Eating on the road.
Yeah, got to go up to Holton.
Why, is there somewhere good?
No, I was just thinking of food.
No.
I'm just started my diet. I drank a protein drink and now I'm starving. I didn't have my Pepsi this morning.
Oh,
so,
no.
yeah.
It's awful.
I know. I think it's
time.
Wait, hold on. Let me turn this one on. Okay.
We are back from executive session. No action taken. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks.